Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. With episode 671 of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and it is Thursday, so you know exactly what that means. We will discuss everything that happened across NXT and AEW this week. However, this episode will also serve as your ultimate preview for the 2024 edition of NXT Deadline with those two Iron Survivor Challenge matches. We have a ton to get to on today's show, as is always the case right here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. And the Silver King has a party to get to with this late taping. So, off the top, let's not waste any time. I'll remind you that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about Defy.
Head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we'll read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. You can follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast and Blue Sky at Getting Over for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. Send questions and comments in for the show on Twitter and Blue Sky. We will read them right here on the program. I did get a number of notes actually this week about NXT and AEW. Just didn't have the time to include them here. So if you have thoughts coming out of Deadline, make sure to hit us up on those accounts. And all the AEW comments and questions that were sent over the last week, I will do my best to include them on next week's show. You were not forgotten about. Also, don't forget, when you follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast, you can vote in our pre- and post-show polls around NXT Deadline this weekend. Those will factor into our NXT Deadline instant analysis, which will come Saturday night after that show goes off the air. Please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
And I hope you do as well, because for $5 a month, $50 now for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You get the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reaction audio to every major show, and exclusive news posts on Friday. Again, that is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. We're not going to do a whole big intro onto today's show. We're getting right into the meat of it because NXT has Deadline, and we will have that ultimate preview at the end of the show. We're going to start with AEW this week, switching it around a little bit. There will be timestamps in the episode description if you wish to jump around. As always, though, I hope you listen to the entire show. As far as a ratings discussion, again, if they come out while we are taping, we will cover them. Certainly interesting numbers for Collision, Rampage, and NXT this week. Raw as well, actually. So we'll do our best to do it. If we do cover the ratings, it will be between the AEW and NXT segments, so just look for that. So it was a rough week of AEW television for me in totality. Dynamite was actually set up well with quality wrestling and tournament matches, storyline progression, all the stuff that we want. It's just that none of it hit. It was so lackluster and an absolute slog to get through. Collision and Rampage, you know the drill on those. Dynamite, they held it in a smaller arena, which was a huge positive. It was the same number of fans, like 3,000, 4,000 in that area, but with it a little bit more contained, it sounded so much better on television. That's a step in the right direction. In terms of storyline relevant matches, AEW hit 4 of 11, so 36%, which is rough. That's outside of tournament matches. If you include Continental Classic matches, which is fair to do, but it's not really the point of this exercise. That would get you to 9 of 16 and 56%, which is a very good number. But again, doing a tournament naturally helps with that. And the tournament matches, as they transpired, didn't exactly have story build within them either. Not that they are needed, because it's a tournament and sometimes you just fight random people, especially in a round robin format. But they also could have created a little bit of story for some of them, and they just didn't do it for any of them. So we're not going to start with that. We're going to start with Hangman Page, who fought and beat Wheeler Yuta on Collision in 12 minutes. While there was obviously a brawl between these sides last Wednesday, I don't believe there was like a specific setup for this particular match, which would have improved it a little bit. But I counted it nonetheless as story relevant. Yuta focused on further injuring Page's leg, only to eat a spider German suplex out of the Tree of Woe. Hangman then destroyed Wheeler ringside, but his knee gave out on a buckshot lariat. He kicked out of the seatbelt and won with Deadeye. But Deadeye necessitates Hangman landing on his knees, including his injured knee. And he didn't sell it after that. This happened as the Death Riders watched from the crowd but didn't get involved. Page beat on Yuta after the bell. The Riders didn't budge. Then he went to snap an appendage with a chair. The Riders still didn't move. So Jay White came out with a chair, and he effectively saved Yuta for no reason, only to hit Blade Runner on Yuta instead. So he saved him from a broken arm, let's say, only to not break his arm himself, but just hit a normal wrestling move just so Page didn't do it. I guess it was fine overall. I don't know why Jay White would give a shit about Wheeler at all. Hangman selling the knee on the finisher after selling it seconds earlier was silly, him not selling it on the finisher. The post-match was super convoluted. This is why it didn't hit. This is what I'm trying to explain. Hangman backstage yelled at an interviewer after this. Christopher Daniels said he's supposed to fine Page for his attack last week, but he doesn't want to do that. He just wants to talk to him as a peer, not an EVP. CD said Hangman's thirst for vengeance is keeping him from being the leader AEW needs and the man he needs to be. Page screamed back at him saying, if the same thing happened to him, he'd have snapped the same way. He called CD an old man. Hangman's right, as has long been the case. His family got threatened. CD telling him to just forget about it and move on is ridiculous. Furthermore, why is every single storyline about AEW needing a leader or a defender or a savior or it being under attack or whatever the case might be? I mean, holy shit. Why are they looking to Hangman to be the leader and savior when he's a heel? Willow Nightingale backstage on Collision said she was happy to help Orange Cassidy at Full Gear, but she pivoted her focus to the International Women's Cup. So she went after Marina Shafir one time, barely did anything, and now she's done. She's moving on. Marina better be interfering in her cup match or starting a feud or something, or else this is just ridiculous. Willow's promo, again, was great. She's the best in the division, speaking on the mic at this juncture, as far as I'm concerned. But the inability to keep her involved in this Death Rider storyline after a sensible save at Full Gear, it's maddening. On Dynamite, White beat Pac in 13 minutes. The first ever match between them, that's cool. Pac locked in the brutalizer as White bled from the mouth. White was able to break it with the ropes while simultaneously collapsing. Yuta took White out with a Bazaiku knee ringside, but despite Pac suffering no damage, White was able to just come back from a brutalizer and a Bazaiku knee to catch him with Blade Runner out of nowhere for the win.
Well, that was a great matchup, but the ending sucked.
It did. Unfortunately, shitty finish to a good match. Then Yuta caught White from behind only to eat a Blade Runner himself. Both of these guys just treated like total losers at the end of this. Marina Shafir then distracted with Jon Moxley attacking White with Paradigm Shift. Hangman came out as they were about to leave. Fans actually chanted for Page. Then a cameraman in all black tried to choke Mox with a camera cable. It was Orange Cassidy. He did it for maybe 5 seconds. Shafir quickly neutralized him, and then she got dumped over the barricade. Mox no-sold an Orange Punch, 8 Paradigm Shift. Page then hit Buckshot Lariat, selling the knee as the others watched. Then in the background, you could see Christian Cage kind of holding his contract, watching all of them. Commentary did everything it possibly could to tell us this was an important Dynamite moment. The fans did chant AEW, so they were hot for it. And then it just kind of went silent. There wasn't a sustained reaction. So is Hangman back to being a face without an actual turn just because he's standing up to Mox? Where was Claudio Castagnoli? He literally had a match later in the show. Where was Darby Allin, by the way? Where was Willow to combat Marina? Now, credit to AEW for actually getting bigger stars involved in this storyline compared to the jobbers at first, and then the conglomeration from the prior couple months. Oh yeah, where was the conglomeration? Do they just not care anymore? It's all cool. Orange can do it himself. They're done. So, like the Hangman Wheeler match, this was story built given what went down last week, but the individual matchup kind of just happened. White was the obvious winner. White and Hangman being on the same page over this works for the Can They Coexist team that I proposed last week. It also feels immensely forced. I'm starting to wonder if all three of them team up and go after the trios titles instead of Mox. The trios titles, by the way, held by Death Riders, have been completely forgotten about. They're never mentioned. No one's trying to get them. It's just they have titles and it doesn't really matter. It's better than it was, this storyline as a whole, but as AEW's top story, its top angle, it just fails to connect with me. It's similar to the NXT main event picture for the men. Try as they might, I just don't care. So let's talk about Continental Classic matches. On Collision, Will Ospreay beat Juice Robinson in a Gold League match that lasted 13 minutes. Good, not great. Juice kicked out of a Styles Clash before losing to Hidden Blade. His right shoulder was all bruised up and gnarly looking. We learned this week that Robinson broke his fibula in the match. Pretty impressive that he was able to complete the match despite being hurt like that. Commander has replaced him in the Gold League going forward. Pin Eater, not really the end of the world, but also what has Commander done to deserve a spot in this Continental Classic? And then I was also wondering, like, why isn't Jay White involved in this? And Bobby Lashley and like some of these guys. It's kind of odd. On Collision, Kyle Fletcher beat the Beast Mortos in a Blue League match that lasted 10 minutes. All good, not great. Fletcher won with a brainbuster. The crowd mostly clapped politely when it was over. On Collision, Kazuchika Okada and Daniel Garcia, both mid-card champions, you'll remember, wrestled to a 20-minute time limit draw in the Blue League. They did a 1-minute announce, which was key to amp up the intensity from a surprisingly quiet crowd entering that time. It came as Garcia had the Dragon Slayer locked in. Okada sold it, but he got saved by the bell. It was a good look for Garcia taking Okada that far. I realized I totally hate the Dragon Slayer because it has no impact on the legs. The legs are all on the canvas, knees included, and Garcia just bends back like the feet, basically. And that's the move. It's not a sharpshooter. It's not anything that you would look at and say, this hurts. It just doesn't at all. Okada refused to shake his hand after the bell just to get some heat. It's probably the best match on Saturday, but really nothing worth seeking out. On Dynamite, Claudio beat Brody King in 14 minutes, and this match was an absolute no doubt.
Big meaty man slapping meat. That's what I want.
Probably my AEW match of the week. Great TV main event. Just as a point of order, both of these guys recently beat Darby clean, so now Claudio also has a win over Brody. So among the three of them, Claudio is the most dominant in kayfabe. Big time shots by both guys, especially down the stretch. Castagnoli ended up winning with a low blow being the key. On Dynamite, Fletcher beat Shelton Benjamin in a Gold League match that lasted 16 minutes and opened the show. Benjamin hit a great thrust kick and 3 German suplexes, but Fletcher ultimately hit a few big moves and grabbed the ropes to cheat for the win. It was a nice way to excuse Shelton's loss just because he's been on a pretty strong run since joining AEW. Fletcher obviously had to be the winner against someone like Benjamin. Later backstage, MVP criticized Shelton for losing, talking down to him like he was his father, reminding that we hurt people. So Benjamin attacked a no-name backstage person. Bobby Lashley first tried to stop him, but then another backstage person touched him. So all three of them just beat those guys up. You can't sit here and say it's impressive that the Hurt Syndicate is attacking randos. And the lack of usage for Lashley coming off of the Swerve match remains a major sore spot to me. It is just terrible. I mean, the fact that AEW brought in Bobby Lashley and Mercedes Moné and Will Ospreay and Kazuchika Okada, and Ospreay is the only one out of any of them that has raised the rent in this company at all is insane. And I talk about raising the rent. That means interest, quality storylines, things like that. The ratings have gone down since they've added all these people. It's unbelievable almost when you think about it. On Collision, Max Caster backstage complained about Swerve Strickland beating him up and ripping his jacket. He called him a gold-toothed bitch, saying he was giving him the chance of a lifetime to fight him on Dynamite. Caster blamed Anthony Bowens for losing the match at Full Gear, but said he knew Bowens and Billy Gunn had his back. 180 from Caster's promo last week. I actually thought this was believable and interesting in a delusional heel type of way. On Dynamite, Caster was still in his ego shit. Gunn tried to talk some sense into him. Caster ignored him. Bowens told Caster to go prove that he's the best wrestler alive, and neither guy supported him as he jogged off. So on Dynamite, Swerve squashed Caster in 2 minutes. After a mediocre rap, he hit 3 house calls. Then he went for the Swerve stomp. Caster was already dead. Didn't even touch him on the move. That was the right booking, Swerve, squashing Caster. Just given the performance level of the two guys, I figured Hurt Syndicate was going to get involved here, just given the teases with Caster. That didn't happen. I thought Caster would go backstage and Bowens and Gunn would have something to say to him, whether to razz him or support him or whatever the case. That didn't happen. And that's the most clear differentiation right now between AEW and WWE. Everything that happens matters beyond the individual moment. Not everything. Many things matter beyond the individual moment. This is something involving Swerve. Think about WWE equivalent, let's say recently, Cody Rhodes and Carmelo Hayes, right? They had a meaningful backstage segment, not something that was kind of random and shitty like what happened with Swerve and Caster a couple weeks ago. And then they had a match. Melo got to cut a promo. It was a good match. Melo got over coming out of it, and Cody gets to move on. This did nothing for Swerve. I mean, he dominated the guy. Cool. Is it going to matter for Caster? Is it going to matter for the Hurt Syndicate storyline? Maybe it will, but we didn't get anything. There was no meat on this. It didn't matter at the end other than to make Caster look bad. Maybe that was the point, but to what end, right? That's what we're still waiting to find out. On Collision, Don Callis backstage said that his family and Konosuke Takeshita would dominate AEW in 2025. That's all he said. It had no relevance for anything else that happened on television this week. On Collision, Kyle O'Reilly argued with the Kingdom backstage, with the guys trying to get his mind right about respecting their and Adam Cole's wishes, going after MJF. Matt Taven kept saying exorcise demons instead of exorcise demons, and it drove me absolutely crazy. And on that note, let me do a little like grammar stuff for all of you here. The phrase is champing at the bit, not chomping at the bit. But I digress. O'Reilly just walked away from this. On Dynamite, the Battle Royal was held involving O'Reilly and Cole. Obviously, they were in the Final Four with Lance Archer and Brian Cage. The faces eliminated the heels simultaneously, leading to a Cole versus O'Reilly match for the MJF opportunity to get the Dynamite Diamond Ring. The match was actually terrible. The ending was obvious, and that's okay because it was the right match to get to, Cole and O'Reilly, based on where they want the story to go. The assumption has long been Cole, MJF at World's End. And I just don't see Cole losing to O'Reilly unless MJF actually shows up and gets involved. And if he does that, and we end up with MJF and O'Reilly at World's End, it's both better because it's more interesting and worse because it means the storyline is going to get dragged out further. So I really just hope it's Cole that wins. That way this thing ends in December and we can move on in 2025. On Dynamite, in another tape promo, MJF laughed about the match outcome, saying Cole turning on him has led to a butterfly effect, with Roderick Strong breaking his arm, Cole being forced to fight O'Reilly, and Mox running roughshod over the entire company as AEW champion. He referred to the yellow look of Cole by mentioning jaundice and was confident O'Reilly would beat him. I hate to say it, I just don't care about any of this. It's so convoluted and ridiculous. And MJF not being there for any of it, it tells the audience, if he doesn't care and AEW doesn't care, why should I care? On Collision, Mariah May, now sporting a black eye, did a standing promo in the spot she attacked Mina Shirakawa. May said they're closer than ever, as evidenced by her decision to give her a shot at the title and having all of it in America, everything that she wants to achieve. Easily Mariah's best promo, maybe since becoming champion. This is the height of her promo ability, but it's pretty high as long as she gets there. On Collision, Mina beat Layla Gray in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. Why? No reason whatsoever. I guess Mariah's attack wasn't that bad. She was able to come back a couple days later and have a match. Mina's entrance was almost as long as the wrestling, and it was certainly more entertaining. On Dynamite, Mariah sat down for an interview in which she just spoke. Now that I'm thinking back on it, in my head, I don't remember her still having a black eye. And if she didn't, that's a huge miss. If she did, then I just completely didn't notice. She said, quote, shaking your tits only gets you so far, unquote. Yeah, no shit. That's what we've been saying. And she wanted to give Mina a chance to do more, which is what she said on Collision. We saw Mina walk in the background of this segment. She approached May from behind with a full champagne bottle, daring her to hit her to her face, not behind her back. Mariah just sat there doing nothing, like intimidated by the entire situation, even though she had the champagne bottle in her own hand. Look, I enjoy May's motivation here. It's a weak build overall, and this was just real rough. On Rampage, Mercedes Moné backstage refused to discuss Camille. She basically said nothing other than that she wants a third title. Then later, we saw Camille laid out backstage. On Collision, Anna Jay backstage in an interview that started with a reminder that Jay lost to May and can no longer challenge for the women's title. Basically said she's going to go after the other title. And that's like fine in general, I guess. My thought here was, let's see how soon she gets a shot, though, because immediately would be silly, given she had multiple chances at Mariah, didn't succeed. If they build her up over a couple months and then she gets a TBS title shot, that could work. On Dynamite, Monet was again asked about Camille, snapping that she doesn't care about her and isn't liable for what happened to her. However, she said she is angry about Anna sticking her nose where it doesn't belong, saying she'd be watching her match later. Jay did not mention Monet. Granted, it's the other women's title in AEW, but she didn't mention going after her. This segment should have happened after Anna's match that she would presumably win. Instead, by doing it beforehand, it gave away the result of the match, not as if we didn't know how it would play out anyway, but it was absolutely nonsensical in terms of how you would build a show and a storyline. So on Dynamite, Anna beat Penelope Ford in 9 minutes, unremarkable, but Jade did get a nice ovation afterward. Monet came out saying if Chris Statlander can't beat her for the title, what makes Anna think she can do it? That's a great point. Monet told her to come back in 10 years when she's accomplished something. That's also a great point.
Thank you!
So Anna lightly slapped her in the face, kind of like you would if you were just horsing around with your dog or something like that. And Monet got angry and left the ring. She didn't want to fight her after being slapped in the face disrespectfully. Extremely, extremely poor.
Come on, Oos. It's a joke, right? It's a joke, Oos. You ribbing me?
On Rampage, Nick Wayne backstage dismissed Hook as a competitor, saying he wanted to fight him in Hammerstein Ballroom. That way they could stick it to Taz. Wayne is a better promo than the vast majority of the young talent in AEW. He's like 50 times better than Hook, apples to apples. Total natural. On Dynamite, Hook came out saying he'd rather fight Christian Cage in Hammerstein so he could fight Nick immediately. Meaning they would have a match right there. He'd fight Christian later. God-awful promo from Hook. I think that's why my breakdown just a second ago was so terrible. Christian came out as a distraction for the other Patriarchy members to attack. Ultimately, Wayne delivered a concerto to Hook's wrist with Christian saying they will talk later. I have to assume the concerto and having it called out as such, injuring Hook the way they did to send him out of action for a bit, that all seems to set up potentially the return of Adam Copeland getting his back. I thought it was going to be Samoa Joe coming back to work with Hook because they were a team and they were working so well together. It's got to be someone because the way this is going is it's just horrendous. Like maybe some fans care about Hook. He's younger and they want to root for him and whatever, but none of this is working at all. Bring back Copeland for this. Maybe it works, but then you're back in the whole Copeland and Cage thing again. Samoa Joe is what I would want to happen just because I want Joe back on my television more than anyone else. On Rampage, Thunder Rosa beat Harley Cameron, in 5 minutes. It was shorter than I expected. Thought it would be a little funnier too. Harley continues to entertain. Thunder held up a sign that said women's wrestling is alive and well after the bell. That is true. Just not really in AEW. Though this was the only match on Rampage with storyline relevance, to be fair. Rosa on Collision said she was keeping an eye on Mariah and Mina because she's a former champion. The presumption here is that she'll get a thrown together title shot at some point, maybe World's End. You'll remember, Thunder has only beaten Harley in AEW this fall, since August. It's December. And she lost a TBS #1 contendership in August, despite beating Deonna Purrazzo that same month. I suppose, given how few women get on TV and how rarely they are booked at all, she's as deserving as anyone for a title match. But that's super weak shit, and really, they should be building Thunder up, having her beat people other than Harley to get that opportunity at Mariah later this month is when it seems like that might actually happen. So yeah, you want to hold up a sign, women's wrestling is alive and well? It is. Not really in this company. On Dynamite, there was a little creepy video voiced over by Julia Hart focused on Jamie Hayter. It remains a stupid feud, but most of the Julia stuff has been nice and different. Hayter later cut a promo backstage saying everyone is pissed about her return at Wembley Stadium. And I was wondering, who is everyone? Are they like breaking kayfabe, talking about fans thinking it was stupid that she came back on a pre-show? Or is she saying that like other wrestlers are mad because she's back? Anyway, Jamie basically said she'd fight Julia. That was the crux of it. On Dynamite, there was a cool little vignette for the return of Bandito, Western-themed type of deal, him being a bandit. On Collision, the Outrunners beat the Iron Savages in 3 minutes. FTR came out after the bell for the Muscle Man dap-up, and literally no other reason. Nothing else happened. What is the point of this shit? On Rampage, Atlantis Jr., Katsuyori Shibata, and Mascara Dorada beat Top Flight and Action Andretti in 12 minutes. Just a match to have a match. The Americans got rid of the whole plain entrance bullshit. On Rampage, Mortos beat Serpentico in 6 minutes. Hey, Mortos got a win over Serpentico. On Rampage, Hechicero beat Commander in 13 minutes. only match on the episode even worth watching, and I wouldn't even bother. And by the way, beat Commander. Now Commander, of course, is in the Continental Classic. And then on Collision, Mystico and Private Party beat Johnny TV and MXM Collection in 8 minutes. Why did that match happen? You guessed it. No reason whatsoever. Now, as we transverse this gap between AEW and NXT, I did briefly want to have a ratings conversation and really about Collision, Rampage, NXT, and Dynamite. We're all going to cover it right here in this segment super quick. It's interesting because AEW tried to combat Survivor Series, and I don't mean like fight against Survivor Series, but ensure that their product was not overlooked because of Survivor Series by moving Collision and Rampage earlier in the day on Saturday, doing a 3-hour block as opposed to doing it at the normal time, keeping one on Friday, changing the channel, whatever the case might be, options that they could have done. And in both cases, Collision and Rampage, they did the lowest ratings in recorded history for those shows. Collision did 144,000 viewers with a 0.03 demo. I mean, the percentages, it's down 60% in viewers, 73% in demo from the prior week. And like, again, early in the day on a Saturday, it just didn't make sense why they did it at all. Rampage did 126,000 viewers. It aired after Collision, down 50% from the prior week. It also had a 0.03 rating, down 2/3 from the prior week. So I don't know who came up with this idea to move these shows and put them in that particular spot just because of Survivor Series or anything else that was going on with Turner, but that was the wrong idea. You want to keep this stuff at night and as close to normal channels and times as you possibly can. NXT did 593,000 viewers and a 0.13 demo. That, of course, was on Tuesday night. That was a dip of about 40,000 viewers week over week. And I would say, let me do some quick math, like 80,000 viewers over the last 2 weeks. They had a really strong rating 2 weeks ago, 672,000 and a 0.19. It's not a good number, all things considered for NXT at the same time. And I believe this with AEW as well. It's week to week. That doesn't really matter. As long as you can still put on good ratings, that's okay. It's when there's a consistent string of low ratings or you can't get back to prior numbers that you hit. That's when it gets concerning. NXT, we know, can hit the 8s if it has main roster talent on the show, which it did October 1st and October 8th. We know that pretty much any week, just operating a normal show, maybe with a little bit of something special, it can get into the 7s. And it is generally sitting in the 6s. It occasionally goes to a 5. That's okay. Like, it sometimes happens and then it bounces back, and that's totally fine. If you get a month of 5s, that's when it starts to be concerning. And that kind of takes us into the AEW Dynamite rating, because AEW Dynamite on Wednesday night, so one night after, not head-to-head, we're not really comparing them in that way, we're just talking about the rating, did 586,000 viewers and a 0.17 demo. So another week in which it did have lower viewership than NXT. This, of course, is AEW's #1 show that just got a huge deal from Warner Brothers Discovery, going up against WWE's 3rd show. Again, we're not comparing the ratings as if they went head-to-head. There's no winner, there's no loser. But the fact that there are fewer people watching this show, and pretty much at this point, at 586,000 viewers, half as many people watching this show as when it hit its high shortly after debuting, that is obviously concerning. But what makes it more concerning, and this is what I was talking about earlier, it's the second straight week below 600,000, and they have not hit 700,000 for one of these episodes since September 25th. They haven't hit 800,000 for any episode, no matter how they book it, no matter how many people they put on the show, no matter anything, since April 10th. So when you see these trends, that's when you start to get concerned when it comes to the AEW Dynamite rating. Again, it doesn't matter because they just signed a new deal with Warner Brothers Discovery. Financially, they are completely set for the next 3 years. But when you see the declining ratings and the attendance issues that they're having for television, they still do extremely well for their pay-per-views. Attendance, sales, in terms of buys for the product, all that, still crushing it. TV right now is a major, major struggle for AEW, and not seeing it improve after last week's down rating, that is super concerning. It did improve by 50,000, but not seeing it hit 600,000 again, which the borderline used to be, when are they going to hit 1 million again? When are they going to hit 900,000 again? When are they going to hit 800,000 again? Now we're wondering, how long are they going to be below 6? That's an issue. I know cable homes are declining. By the way, on this note, I just want to put something out there. There are people who compare the AEW Dynamite rating with the NXT rating in terms of winner or loser, which, as we've always said, is ridiculous. But I hear this take somehow that because the CW is in more homes, technically it's a broadcast network, free over the air, that it should be stronger from a ratings perspective than TBS, which is in fewer homes because you have to pay for it. It's a cable station. That could not be further from the truth. Yes, the CW is free over the air and more people have access to it. Way, 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 way fewer people watch the CW on any given day, in any given week, in any given month, in the entirety of the year than watch TBS, which is one of the most popular cable stations in the world. If you were comparing TBS to NBC or Fox or anything else, you'd have a legitimate point. The CW is not that. It's like My Network TV. My Network TV, back in the day, had people watching it. It had original programming. Now, the CW is filled with like Pictionary and Trivial Pursuit. And by the way, NXT. And yes, they do have sports, but those viewers come and go, just like the NXT viewers for WWE come for this and then go immediately after and leave the station. They're not sticking around from the lead-in. They are coming specifically for WWE. It's the opposite for AEW. TBS and TNT, these are stations that have consistent ratings all day and all night, every single day. And yeah, AEW is higher than a lot of other programming on the station, but there's still a lot of people watching it anyway. So just because the CW is a broadcast network that is free and is in more homes does not mean it's a stronger station. TBS, despite being on cable, despite having to pay for it, is by far a stronger station. You know things that are happening on TBS. You have no idea what's happening on the CW. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if me telling you they air Trivial Pursuit and the like, Pictionary and shit like that, is the first you've heard that that's actually the case. Moving over to NXT, we're going to start by discussing everything that happened on the show not directly relevant to NXT Deadline, but mixed in will be direct builds, such as qualifiers for matches on NXT Deadline. Qualifiers and setups for matches. And then, of course, we will have your NXT Deadline Ultimate Preview at the end of the show, breaking down every single match with predictions, picks, and much more. Let's start where you know the Silver King loves to start. Jada Parker, Ren Sinclair, Kalani Jordan, and Cora Jade in a women's last chance qualifier for the Iron Survivor Challenge. Fun extended counter and pin sequence at the start. Jada rolled through a Lani flying crossbody, only to eat a Cora missile dropkick. Parker then hit a double stack teardrop in the corner with her high step celebration. Jade based a Tower of Doom. Lani did a split-legged Liger Bomb. Parker murked Sinclair with a spinebuster, only for Jade to break it with a Swanton Bomb. Lani did Rob Van Dam's spin kick. She nailed it perfectly. Then she hit a double 5-star frog splash. Then she did a handspring lariat and a perfect 450 on Cora. Lola Vice ran in, attempting to strike Parker as she was running the ropes. Instead, Jada ducked, and the back fist nailed Ren, who fell down atop Cora for the 1-2-3 as Lola pulled Jada out of the ring. This was a fabulously fun match with a tremendous finish. Would have been better if we didn't see something nearly identical happen when Ethan Page won the NXT title a few months ago. Kind of ran that spot back here. It was sensible given Sinclair was the least strong of the women in the match, but at the same time, it felt repetitive because we had just seen something like that, and it's so unique that if you do it so close in such succession, it's going to obviously remind you of what happened previously. Separate it by a year, you can forget about it. Separated by 2 months, you're like, I just saw that shit. I just assumed Lani was going to get put through, so it was obviously good news for me that we got a break from her in a big spot. That said, Lani was great on Tuesday for the second week in a row. A few too many gymnastic spots, it becomes overkill when it's the entirety of her offense, but still way toned down from some of that bullshit that we've been talking about over the last couple of months. So that's 2 weeks in a row. She's had damn good matches. I don't want to say she was the star of this match, but she had the biggest spots. There's no question about that. Obviously, Parker showed out the most of the foursome. She's ready for the main event division on NXT, no doubt about it. 3.5 stars and a B. By the way, I didn't really grade the AEW matches this week, but many of the ones that I said were good were 3.5, 3.75. I didn't have anything go above that. That's why I didn't single them out. 2 segments later, Parker stormed back out to the ring, demanding officials remove the ropes immediately for an NXT Underground match. For some reason, they complied. She stayed in the ring through the commercial break holding a brick, demanding Vice get her ass out there. And then she said,
Lola Vice, I thought I made it crystal clear, baby, when I smashed that brick on your skull. But clearly you want to cost me my qualifier match, not once, but twice. So you know what that means. We got to run this shit back. And oh, baby, you want this underground match? I'm going to give you what you want. But bitch, I ain't leaving this damn ring until you get your ass out here. Now.
I mean, that is as real as it gets, man. That is a top tier mic worker. She's been in this business, 2 years maybe? Jada Parker has it.
You have it. You couldn't get rid of it. You couldn't sell it if you wanted to. You are it.
She is it. Period. That's all that needs to be said. Jada and the crowd were hype as hell. Ava came out, as you heard a second ago, saying she's happy to give Parker the match she wants at NXT Deadline. Vice strolled out to the ring talking shit. She called her a dirty girl in Spanish. So Jada threw the brick down, gave her a back elbow to the head, knocking Lola out cold. Kind of a holy shit moment. I did find it funny how the officials listened to Jada and started removing the ropes for her without any okay from authority, spoke to her power. This was also one of Lola's best promos. She's so much better when she's not whining into the mic, when she's just talking shit. We've been on the Jada Parker train since day one. You know this. Day one-ish in these parts. Miss Parker is straight up the baddest in NXT history. No argument accepted. Yeah, Asuka and Shayna Baszler and Bianca Belair, they were bad. Obviously, Ms. Parker is the baddest in the true definition of the term. What a top tier effort from her here. The energy and passion and promo. Damn, man. You could have put this on any wrestling product any year, and the crowd would have gone wild for her. Hell yeah, Ms. Parker. Hell yeah, hype as shit for this. Eddie Thorpe backstage said he's able to compete in the men's last chance qualifier because Shawn Michaels and Ava watched the tape back last week, realized he wasn't at fault. He was excited to get a fair chance at winning Iron Survivor for his people. Lexis King came in telling Thorpe he needs to control his emotions and not be a loose cannon. Thorpe shot back about King's daddy issues, but he said he's proven he's not his father's son. King again came across as legitimate while Thorpe acted an ass the entire time. It was the best Thorpe segment in a long, long time. Thorpe, King, Axiom, Cedric Alexander were in the last chance qualifier. Javon Evans was in the crowd rooting for Ced with Ethan Page on commentary. There was a nice Spanish fly early. King had Axiom in a pinning combination, hitting a fisherman suplex on Alexander simultaneously for a double near fall. The truth is, he had Axiom pinned for 6 seconds, but the referee didn't count it. Then King hit a freaking tope con hero full bore, which was a shock. Fans got behind Lexis, who also hit a swanton bomb. Where the hell did this come from? Thorpe delivered a great brainbuster to Axiom. Ced did a springboard moonsault. Axiom took out Thorpe with an avalanche Spanish fly for an arm raise 2.9. Alexander broke an armbar with a frog splash and hit King with a Michinoku driver. Axiom then got King with golden ratio, only to be pulled off at the last second with Thorpe stealing the cover for the 1-2-3. This thing was blistering, totally unexpected. Talk about over-delivering. Not sure I can even pinpoint an MVP for the match. All 4 of these guys busted their asses and put on a show. King was the surprise of the bunch, somehow going into a luchador bag out of nowhere. King wouldn't have been the worst choice, but I'm glad he didn't win. Alexander was my preference, as you all know, but I also knew that wasn't going to happen. Axiom was the best option, I believed, for a multitude of reasons. Thorpe, I may have said last week, was the least interesting. I forget. By the time this ended, though, I was into it because of the storytelling and the promo backstage. This was a huge opportunity for him in the moment at Deadline. We'll see if he winds up delivering. 3.75 stars B+. Honestly, it was right on the border of an A-. This was a really good match. Thorpe later was feeling himself heading into the GM office, bragging about winning when finally being given a fair chance. We also saw Robert Stone and Stevie Turner shocked to see someone walk into that office. We will circle back to that in a little bit. Tag team number 1 contendership battle royal. Luca Crucifino got eliminated by a chop from Yoshiki Inamura, which was a great spot. Gallus, Hank and Tank, Miles Bourne, and Lucian Price were the final 6. Tyson DuPont shook Hank and Tank's hands after getting eliminated, but Tyreek Igwe, his partner, refused to do the same. That inadvertently led to Hank getting knocked out. Hank caught Tank outside, saving him from elimination. Gallus got eliminated in succession, leaving the 3 singles with their teammates ringside. Price got a hot run with Tank hitting a springboard shoulder tackle. They teamed up on Price only for Bourne to spin Tank around and then dropkick Price off the top rope, literal seconds after each other, to clinch the win for NQCC. I was not into this match as a battle royal, but I'll tell you, when it basically became a triple threat at the end, the intensity picked up massively over those final few minutes. NQCC was the most interesting team in the field, but I did not expect them to pull it off for some reason. It was a huge spot for Bourne to show what he can do, and they absolutely made something out of what was largely nothing when it began. I'd get into all the details about why I wasn't thrilled with the overall booking in the last few weeks, but I did that on the last show. I did that the week before as well. In the end, it wound up as a fun battle royal with the best possible match set for Deadline in terms of in-ring work. And that's really all you can ask from a booking situation like this. Best of a worst case scenario. NQCC later motivated one another, all excited that they qualified for Deadline. Charlie Dempsey even actually supported Sinclair for the first time, said he believed in her as an Iron Survivor winner. Fun little segment, just seeing them all come together finally. It's crazy how this faction has done a total 180 from the way it started, particularly after adding Ren. They're technically still heels, but they're lovable heels and they're becoming faces, and it's just all working together really nicely. Sean Spears backstage praised his guys for getting the job done last week. Spears said Nico Vance is almost ready to be unleashed on the roster, but their group is missing one thing. He then stopped Gigi Dolan walking backstage with Tatum Paxley, telling her that they'll be watching her return match. My first thought was, man, that was creepy as hell. This is like a much older dude telling a younger woman, I'm going to be watching you real close. And then Tatum literally told Gigi that he was creepy. I laughed at that because I thought, I was the only one thinking that in the moment, and she just went out and said it. So it was probably purposeful then. I didn't have much more on the backstage segment. Dolan fought Izzy Dame. I forgot Izzy existed. Must have been injured or something. Spears watched from the ramp. Dame took Paxley's head off ringside for no real reason. Dolan hit a Rainmaker, but got her pin attempt countered. Gigi dodged her into the post and hit the Gigi driver for the win. She wasn't as fluid here as last week. It was still a nice step up from the way she wrestled before her injury layoff. And I think some of the lacking fluidity was probably on Izzy just being green. It could also just been ring rust. Nice return performance, but nothing special. Carmen Petrovic backstage told Brindley Reese she was right about Ashanti the Adonis and that she's done with him. Reese pointed out that she may have taken it out of context, and Adonis actually likes her. She just wants revenge on Nikita Lyons, she said, in a match. Dion Lennox piped up, saying he saw the text. Nikita was saying crazy stuff. And then Carmen received flowers from Ashanti, with Dion trying to back up his boy. So we got Petrovic against Lyons. Nikita was back in her horrendous gear for this match. She had a German suplex but missed a Vader bomb, sending Adonis down to rally Petrovic. Nikita tried running at her with a forearm, but Ashanti shoved Carmen aside. He ate the forearm. That allowed Petrovic to hit her silent slice. Hey, a named finisher. Look at that. For the win. Carmen was angry at Ashanti for pushing her, despite the fact that, she won the match and he saved her. Petrovic's character really needs to get her head out of her ass at this point. Like, she just comes across like an absolute moron. And hopefully they figure that out. I'm still into the story. It is starting to lose it for me a little bit. So that really wraps up what happened on NXT Building 2. NXT Deadline. Now let's go ahead and do the NXT Deadline Ultimate Preview. We'll break down every match. We'll discuss a little bit more of what happened on television. And then at the end, we will move into our pre-show expectation grade for Deadline. Of course, a reminder, all of you will get the opportunity to vote and share your pre-show expectation grade on Twitter at Getting Overcast. Poll gets posted 1 hour before the show begins. And of course, there will be another once NXT Deadline goes off the air. And again, we will have your NXT Deadline instant analysis later Saturday night. So we have the Tag Team Championship Fraxium against Miles Bourne and Tavian Heights of NQCC. Now, Fraxium did get into an argument backstage about Frazier being focused on the Tag Team Battle Royal, while Axiom was concentrating on preparing for his last chance qualifier. if I've said it once on this show, I've said it 1,000 times. Fraxium right now might be the best tag team in all of WWE. They're probably the most interesting, and they are definitely the best in the ring. They work extremely well together. They're super exciting. But they have been telling this split storyline for so long at this point that given Frazier will be wrestling 2 matches on this show, Nathan Frazier, you have to believe it's going to come to a head here. Their current reign stands at 94 days as we tape this show. And outside of an 18-day interruption for Chase U, they've held the titles for like 2/3 of the year, like 210, 20 days in 2024. So they really have been carrying the tag team division on this brand. What's important to know that we don't know and affects directly the prediction for this match is the card order for NXT Deadline. Is this going to open the show? That way, Frazier is able to calm himself down and wrestle again later for the Iron Survivor. Is the men's Iron Survivor going to open? In which case, Frazier goes into this match possibly injured. Like, those are all questions that we don't have answers to, which makes predicting this match and the Iron Survivor both difficult. With all of those unknowns, given the storyline, given how long Fraxium has held the titles, and really how badly this tag team division needs to be moved forward, I'm going to go ahead and predict the title change. I think Bourne and Heights end up getting the win. NQCC takes the titles to their faction. And I don't know whether Fraxium splits, but I do have a prediction of what might happen in that men's Iron Survivor. So let's just put a pin in this and we'll circle back on it shortly. We have Lola Vice against Jada Parker in NXT Underground. This is a super tough match to predict because look, the straight up truth is that Jada Parker should win this match going away. She should move up to the main event level of NXT, and she should probably be NXT Women's Champion by April. The problem is you have Julia and Stephanie Vaquer and Zarya and a ton of other super talented women who all belong in that same spot. The other issue is Parker already beat Vice in a street fight. She did that on the ECW show. Parker also lost to Vaquer, although that was, of course, Vice's doing, and Vice cost her both chances to qualify for the Iron Survivor. But then you consider whether this is going to go to a rubber match and whether Lola costing Jada those opportunities for Iron Survivor count in the minds of the creative team as a win for her, right? Because if it did, and you say, okay, Parker won the first match, but Lola has completely crushed her, in costing her opportunities and being a thorn in her side, that's a win for her. Then Parker wins the rubber match, kind of almost forced. If you do that, then the feud ends. If you don't, and Lola wins, then you have to go to a third match. And if you're going street fight and then NXT Underground, you got to go steel cage at a minimum, if not something else, as that third rubber match to end the feud. And I just have to believe that's the direction they're going. Don't forget it was Vice who was laid out on the go home. Jada got the big moment. She had the match. She showed out in that. The promo extended where she looked like a total badass. She back-fisted Vice, which is pretty much her own move, laid her out, knocked her out cold. And then she's going to go win the match in NXT Underground, which to this point has been Vice's match in NXT. It's a little tough to believe. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Lola Vice, winning this with Jada Parker, and them going to a rubber match, which would be fantastic. If they do it, I have no idea what that match would be. I'm going to need to think on it. But that will be my prediction for this. I had to talk myself into it a little bit. I wasn't sure what I was going to do coming into the show. Let's move to the NXT Championship. Trick Williams against Ridge Holland. Eric Bischoff opened hour 2 of TV, basically putting himself over as a revolutionary, saying that the revolution is now happening in NXT. Bischoff told Holland he's a throwback to the likes of Dick the Bruiser, while Williams is a modern star who has it all. Ridge told Trick he's a stand-up comedian with abs and an insult to NXT. He got Ridge's a wanker chance, which was great. It actually made him crack a little bit. Trick called him bland, vanilla, and boring, saying he himself is more than Flash. He'll take his ice off and give him a cold ass whooping. Good line. Holland came back with a rugby being a man's game compared to American football, which was super weak. But his point was that Williams is soft and can easily be put down. Trick swung and form tackled Ridge drove him into the steel steps, then hit Redeemer on the announce table. Williams got braced for this and stretchered off. It was basically a DDT. It seemed really dramatic, given it was the announce table, not the steel steps or the floor or anything like that. The angle is that Saturday's title match is in doubt, though Trick is adamant about the match happening no matter what. Perfectly solid go home with the heel looking not just strong, but dominant over the champion. The promo work was also good both ways. I like Trick's selling of the Redeemer with a little shake before going limp. I just can't help but remain uninterested in this feud overall. I'm not even saying it's anyone's fault. There's nothing wrong with the storyline. Holland is legit doing good heel work. I just don't see Ridge winning the title, and he doesn't excite at all as a top challenger. Really, like I said last week, the insertion of Bischoff here was completely worthless. He just wasn't needed. And if anyone watched because of him, I'd be utterly shocked, especially because we already discussed the ratings and they went down substantially from the prior 2 weeks. I'm not saying that people tuned out because Bischoff was on the show, but I'm also not saying that either. This was also a huge missed opportunity to not parlay the whole New Day storyline with Big E into Ridge's character. They had mentioned it in the past, obviously. I should say they've more referred to it. This was an opportunity to own it and get major heat, given they decided to talk about it on the main roster one night earlier. Hey, that thing with Big E, Trick, I'll do that to you also. Like, it was so easy. It was right there. They just didn't even get to it. He could have gotten major heat, and it would have been fantastic. Let's move to the men's Iron Survivor Challenge. Javon Evans, Wesley, Ethan Page, Nathan Frazier, and Eddie Thorpe. And by the way, let me just state this off the top. I hope this opens NXT Deadline. I do believe the women's Iron Survivor match should main event the show. Really no question, especially given your men's title matches, Trick and Ridge. X-Pac backstage dapped up Javon Evans, who blushed, learning that Pac was a big fan. He explained that he was the same age as Javon when he beat Razor Ramon and believes that he has a real shot in this match. Evans went to dap him up only to get a too sweet offer instead. I could not help but smile wide watching this. Javon is so easy to cheer for, and that was such a pure fanboy type of moment. The only other build for this match left a whodunit question mark at the end of NXT, as Thorpe was shown laid out in the men's shower in the final moments of the show. Quite a cliffhanger, and you do need to assume that they're going to pull him from this match. And that was the reason to do that. It's probably linked to the shock on Stone and Turner's face backstage after he left the office. You'll remember we talked about that earlier. If they wind up replacing him in the match, I presume it will be Axiom coming off losing the tag team titles on the show. That's if that match happens first. If it doesn't, I could see Axiom getting in, Frazier being angry at that, and then that even causing further issue in their actual tag team title match. But all of this remains to be seen, and I'm legitimately just guessing there. I suppose it could also be a main roster superstar. It could also be the Attacker or just anyone else that they want to put in. I don't think they would do it randomly. If you're going to build this angle, it would probably need to either be the Attacker, a main roster superstar, or Axiom, given the fact that he was the one who would have gotten the win in the qualifier if Thorpe had not pulled him out of the ring. What's most curious, though, is the mystery attacker. There's really only a few options that come to mind. The first would be Oba Femi, but it just doesn't make any sense. The other is Pentagon, whose AEW contract has expired while his brother Rey Fenix is stuck there, being sidelined by Tony Khan, who extended his contract for a year, or injury time, whatever the case might be. I'd assume the idea was to debut them together as a team on the main roster, but if Penta is only going to make sporadic appearances in WWE, if at all, over the next year, using him in NXT that way, so he can go back and forth to Mexico, do whatever he wants over there, that could be the play. A perhaps more logical option would be some combination of Hikuleo and Lance Enowahi, both of whom have signed with WWE for NXT, but have yet to appear on television. Remember, Thorpe has been arguing with Ava of late, and Trick last week shouted out a reminder in his promo that her family has her back, referencing the bloodline. Well, their family. It makes a lot of sense. Of course, I mentioned Femi off the top. He's been in Nigeria of late. I guess if they wanted to put him into this match, they could do that and have him take out Thorpe, steal the spot. But if he's in this match, he has to win. So the prediction for this is difficult. If it is Obafemi, somehow, I have Obafemi winning the Men's Iron Survivor Challenge. Simple as that. Don't even need to think about it otherwise. If he is not in the match, and it is either the Tongan or the Samoan, I can't imagine them winning. That really wouldn't make sense. If it's Axiom, I don't see him winning either. So really, the only potential replacement that I could see coming out with a dub here would be Femi. In terms of the actual competitors, Thorpe, I suppose if he actually does wrestle in the match and their entire idea behind his attack is to gain sympathy for his character, that could make sense, but that has not been the way they've been telling his story over the last couple of months. Javon is a super repetitive, challenger. Like, he literally just did it, lost. He's still young. He doesn't even need to do it again. Ethan Page was just champion. It'd be extremely annoying for him to win this match. I don't think anyone would get excited about that. He's doing great in NXT, don't get me wrong. I don't think anyone wants him winning the Men's Iron Survivor Challenge. Frazier would make a lot of sense. I like the idea of him losing and then going into the tag team title match depressed. Or if they already lose the titles earlier and Axiom is angry or gets involved, he could cost it for him, potentially. So there's outs for Frazier, is my point. And by process of elimination, that leaves me with Wes Lee. And he really hasn't been pushed that hard over the last couple of weeks, though, of course, we did see his changed hairstyle, which was a shocker. So I'm going to pick Wes Lee. I have zero confidence in this pick. Just remember that if it is Obafemi, I'm picking Obafemi instead. So let's move to the Women's Iron Survivor Challenge. Sol Ruca, Julia, Stephanie Vaquer, Zarya, and Ren Sinclair. The go-home for this main evented NXT with Roxanne Perez leading the segment. She reminisced about winning the first Iron Survivor before talking shit, saying they'll all be fighting to finish second to her. Roxy put over Ren out of the 5 for being underrated like she used to be, and then she ran the others down. Everyone else came out with Perez saying they need to go through each other first, so they just started brawling, with Sinclair getting a shot on Perez, grabbing her title, and holding it over her head. Ren Sinclair holding the NXT Women's Championship over Roxanne Perez. Loved that. Unexpected. But I'll take whatever Ren I can get. The problem is, that was the most exciting part of this entire segment. Not sure there was much more they could do other than like the trite promo segment where everyone says a line and then they all fight. But this was an immensely lackluster go-home and arguably the worst segment on the 2-hour NXT. I have long defended Roxanne on the mic, saying people have overly and unfairly criticized her. But this promo was the type that gave all of those criticisms more legitimacy. It actually gave me some concern about her future on the main roster. She needs to speak better. She needs to emote better. It doesn't come across, in this case, the other times I've been fine with it, but in this case, it did not come across as legitimate, like as believable. She actually, I think, needs to go to acting class and figure out how to emote better than she currently is. This absolutely needed a better go-home build, the Women's Iron Survivor Challenge. I'd have preferred a video package hyping up the match than what we actually got here. It accomplished nothing. It did tease that perhaps Ren is more of a live underdog than we might have anticipated, given she was the one that got the go-home moment over Roxy in the end. But at the end of the day, I just don't really see Ren jumping from lower mid-carder to Women's Iron Survivor Challenge winner. So I'm eliminating her from contention here. Zarya, she's come on, she's been strong. She hasn't really done that much to impact the show to go and win the Women's Iron Survivor Challenge. I don't see her as being the option. Julia obviously already had her title opportunity. I don't doubt that she's going to win it at some point between now and April. I don't think you need to have her take the Women's Iron Survivor. So that actually brings me down to Stephanie Vaquer and Sol Ruca. And this is a tough pick between the two of them. On one hand, Vaquer's now been on this brand for a couple months, hasn't gotten the title shot despite being lauded pretty much equally to Julia. On the other, Sol has been doing great work of late, and she's won, I believe, all or almost all of her matches since returning from injury. She's also a pure babyface. Roxy's a pure heel. And if they want to run this match at some point before Stand and Deliver, which of course is in April, then it would make sense to go through Sol and then deal with Stephanie later. But in a spot like this, given how star-studded this match is, and you have Sol and Ren really serving as the two women most likely to take falls, even though that doesn't matter, right? it's the most wins over, the extended period of time. Even with that being the case, I can't imagine them taking all those falls and then ultimately going and winning the entire thing. So I'm going to pick Stephanie Vaquer as the winner of the Women's Iron Survivor. So that wraps up our NXT Deadline Ultimate Preview, leaving us to give you a pre-show expectation grade. A reminder, you will get a chance to vote and share your pre-show grade and your post-show grade on Twitter at Getting Overcast right before and right after NXT Deadline. As far as I'm concerned, huge expectations for both Iron Survivor Challenge matches. I mean, the ceiling of both, I guess, is an A+, but I'm expecting like A- as a floor for those two matches. They're incredible with great opportunities for the participants within them to shine. Trick and Ridge Holland, I have extremely low expectations for. NXT Underground, I think, is going to be a great match. And I'm pretty confident that the tag team match is going to deliver. So, you know what? I was coming in right on the border, as we pretty much always are, of B+, A-, kind of coming into a show. And with NXT, I usually go a little bit lower, but I believe this show is going to deliver in a significant way. It is the final, by the way, WWE Premium Live event of the entire year. Saturday night's main event is next week, but it's not a PLE. I'm going to go with a 90, an A- as my pre-show expectation grade. I do have particularly high hopes for NXT Deadline, and we will see if those are justified this coming Saturday. So, a reminder, we will have your NXT Deadline instant analysis once that show goes off the air Saturday night. We will be back on Tuesday with your next WWE show. And of course, 1 week from now, same bat time, same bat channel, we will have your NXT and AEW episode. A reminder, though, because I just forgot as I was saying it, next Tuesday's WWE show, that's going to be your Saturday night's main event Ultimate Preview, and we will have an instant analysis coming out of Saturday night's main event. So 4 straight 3-show weeks right here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. Let's wrap this up. As I said earlier, the Silver King has a party to get to. First, with a reminder that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
It's all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple, take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast and Blue Sky at Getting Over for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. You can send in questions and comments for the show on both Twitter and Blue Sky. We will get to all of those next week, I promise you. Please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You will get the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major TV show, and exclusive news analysis posts every single week. Again, buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. That is it for today. I hope you all enjoy your weekend and NXT Deadline. This is the Silver King signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.